My favorite shark is Mr. Wonderful.
Oh, he's just ruthless.
Because he's ruthless.
All
right?
He takes all the emotion out of, but he's smart.
Right. So he's incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
He's ruthless. Mm-hmm. But what a lot of people like, for instance, like my girlfriend, she's like, why would you like him? You know, like, how do you like Mr. Wonderful? Like, you know, the things he says to people and whatever. And she gets why he says the things he does and everything. But at the end of the day, like, the reality of it is, like, the way he sucks the emotion out of the investment and creates this one thing where it's like, hey, this is all that matters, right? Like, here's my dollars and cents, right? And they're like, okay, daddy, where am I going today? And like, I'm gonna send you off to so and so, and then you're gonna come back and you're gonna bring all your friends with you, right? And the way he explains, like, how, you know, your investment is supposed to make some money, because that's all he's there to do. Yes. And that's why I love him, because other than that, he's like, I'm gonna take your product behind a barn and shoot it. That's where it belongs. Like,
and I love him because he's so blunt. He'll just give it to you as it is. And like in business, you need it like that. Like, I'm sorry, but like, this is not where we talk about feelings. Like, there's a time and place for that.
There's a time and a place for
business.
It. Right.
And if you are going to talk about like being sad because your business isn't doing well, like what are Ben and I going to tell you? Well, like, you're doing something wrong.
You're doing something wrong. I tell people all the time, like, you know, when I'm consulting with people, if there's something wrong in the sequence meaning like the entirety of what they're operating, you know, from end to end, start to finish, from, you know, from subscriber to client, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, if there's something wrong, I'm going to figure out I'm going to do a diagnosis, like a doctor does a diagnosis on what, you know, what's off in the code, you know what I mean? Right. Yeah. If you're looking at, you know, something, it's like, okay, for instance, you know, a lot of people market, you know, and they market via email or they market via social, right? And something could be off on their marketing, right? And when you pick that out, you're like, boom, diagnosed, fixed, done. Let's redo it. Let's run the sequence, and it should work.
Very logical.
Right. Logical, right.
No emotion. And what's funny is, just to go a little back on how you mentioned about Mr. Wonderful. Yeah. And like removing the emotion. Mm-hmm. One quote, and maybe I won't get it to the exact.
Oh, you're going to do the quotes today. All right.
One thing that he mentioned was like, the best industry that Mr. Wonderful wants to go in is weddings and death. Yeah. And he's like, that is the only time that people will just pay outrageous amounts of money, because you can kind of take advantage of their emotions at the time, and they're willing to pay emotionally how much this wedding cake, which if it was a regular cake, would only cost, you know, $1,000 cheaper, than now it's a wedding cake, or like a wedding DJ, or a wedding photographer, or anything. Or now you're talking about funerals. Again, I know we're getting a little morbid here, but Mr. Wonderful is to the point correct. Right. You can upcharge in those and take advantage. It sounds so bad. Right.
Because nobody, like exactly what you're saying. I'll take this emotional burden off you right now, because I know it's tough. And you know, hopefully nobody's planning a funeral. Right. But at the end of the day, that's not where you're going to spare expenses. Right. Unless you just don't have them, you know. But bottom line is, like, you know, if you have money, you're not going to spare an expense at somebody's funeral. Like, God forbid anyone is talking about burying anybody, but like, you know, Mr. Wonderful, as a savvy investor, so weird to talk about that with morbidity, but like, he's literally, you know, making a case for not preying on people's emotions, but utilizing the market. I mean, because there's a market. How many funeral parlors, how many wedding planners exist in the marketplace right now? Yeah, like a bazillion, and he's on top of that stuff.
And there goes another thing in an episode that you talk about, is like a saturated market. Right. You know how many wedding photographers there are, but yet there's still new ones every single day. You know why? Because it's high demand. Mm-hmm. You can start your photography company tomorrow and start charging $5,000-$6,000 for clients. Right. Absolutely. And there's hundreds of thousands and millions of people getting married every single year. Right. and you can capture part of that market.
Right.
So as much as like people want to shy away from even like, for example, our coaching program or like consulting, you're like, oh my God, it's so saturated. No, it's high demand.
It's high demand.
People want high touch points.
Right.
And if you can provide this level of service and get people results, it's a win-win.
If you want to be a wedding photographer, or if you want to start a wedding planning business, or if you want to do something like of that level, like come join our Facebook group. We'll talk about it. I'll show you exactly how to do it in a weekend, right? I'll have your business set up in a weekend, and then at that point, it's moving forward to just getting clients, right? Getting clients for your business, clients that you said want to pay $5,000 to $6,000 to take care of whatever their needs are, right? In the wedding, in the wedding space.
Yeah, and forgot to mention this at the very beginning. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave us a review.
Yes, leave a review, please. That's one of the most important parts. If you do enjoy the content, please leave a review. If you don't, leave us a message on the Facebook group.
Yes. Check out our private Facebook group. Again, if you want to interact with us, talk about business, and start creating your own coaching program.